Hi everyone, and welcome back to the fantasyfootballfix.com YouTube channel with me, Tom Campbell, and welcome back to another Elite Team 11 team reveal. We've got Craig on. I'm super excited to welcome him back to the channel. We're going to be talking Game Week 21. We're going to be talking double game weeks. So without further ado, guys, let's get right into it. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel with me, Tom Campbell. You can find me on Twitter at UtterlyTC, and you can see we've got Craig all the way from Copenhagen joining us. Once again, we spoke just before Christmas, just before the World Cup. Feels like an eternity ago. Craig, welcome back to the channel, man. How have you been doing?
I've been doing really good. Thanks for having me back so soon after the last time.
Pleasure, man. It's good to have you. Good to have you back. And we can see here, Craig, you're doing similarly well to Mark, who we had on the channel last week. Live rank of around about 125,000 right now. Obviously, guys, we're recording this on a Sunday night. The North London derby has just finished, so these live ranks are a little bit out, but not so much it makes a difference. Who's counting anyway? And you can see in the Elite 11 League, Craig, you are positioned well, third place there. So how's your season? Before we talk about the game week in progress right now, Craig, how would you say your season's been going so far?
Okay, but not great.
Mm-hmm.
But my benchmark was pretty much, it should go much better than last season, which was really quite of a disaster, to be completely honest. So this year, I've just been playing it, up until this week at least, I've been playing it much more safe. And as I've written about on your site and we spoke about last time, I'm generally quite frustrated with pricing in the game this season because I think it makes it a little bit too easy, except my rank says otherwise.
Okay.
But I'm enjoying it so far. But it feels like we've just entered into the serious part of the season now. So
it does.
Really getting warmed up now.
It does. And yeah, like you mentioned, Craig, you write on our site on fantasyfootballfix.com and the Elite 11 manager section, guys, which you can go over and check out and get Craig's thoughts on the other elite managers if you want to follow their blog thoughts. But I mean, you're well positioned, right? Mark said last week he sort of positioned or wanted to be benchmarked around about 100k after 20 game weeks, which felt completely reasonable. Do you sort of agree with that? I mean, and if so, you're operating right around there, Craig. So are you still looking to have a strong finish to the season? Still think it's in your gift to do that?
I think it's incredibly doable to get top 10K. I mean, I would agree for the most part with Mark with the 100K. The difference, this season is perhaps the gaps between the ranks are really, really tight, I think, compared to other seasons. That at least I don't go back and look at Excel files, but it feels much tighter. Yeah. So I'm interested in the overall rank, but most of all, my benchmark is always how far do I have to get to 10K?
Yeah.
And this season it's not so far at all, and you only have to sneeze once, and you find yourself falling back 50,000 from just a few points. But it works both ways.
You mentioned it working both ways, Craig. We were talking off camera just before we started recording about how Game Week 20 is going for you. Do you want to talk to the guys about how you used fantasyfootballfix.com's live Game Week rank to check how you did after your transfers were made for Game Week 20, and talk to us about what those were?
Yeah, I mean, we'll go backwards. Should we start with the transfer?
Let's do it.
Because it makes more sense. Okay, so here comes the long answer. I view each transfer individually. Put it a different way, I view each hit individually. So if there are reasons, that wasn't the case this week, but if there are reasons to take a 5-point hit, a 20-point hit, then I'm looking at that on a player-by-player basis.
I see.
It's pretty essential you get that situation. But I took 4 transfers this week. I had 1 free transfer, so that's 3 hits.
So a 12-point hit.
12-point hit. Mm-hmm. And there was a logic, but the live rank isn't showing it yet. Okay, so and might well never, by the way it's going. But let's start with the goalkeeper. I had Keeper and Ward, and the way that Chelsea had been playing really didn't fill me with any confidence that I'd made the right choice.
They've been dreadful, haven't they? Yeah.
They've been really, really poor.
Yeah.
So, and I've for many seasons now had this opinion with regard to goalkeepers that there is just never a good time to use a transfer on a goalkeeper. There's just never a game week. I mean, it's so rare you have a game week where you're sitting there with a free transfer to burn that you don't know anything to do with.
No.
So I've long since held the thought that if the keeper needs changing, screw it, just do it. And to back up my rationale, I went on to I've forgotten what the feature is precisely called now, but the feature on Fix where you can look at the points projections for the coming.
Yeah, sure. Points projections. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, points projections. Yeah. And the points projections for Edison, who I ended up going for, compared to keeper, was like, I think it's maybe 12 points over the coming 5 weeks. Yeah. And of course, that's because he has, starting from yesterday, 6 games in 4 game weeks.
Yeah.
So that felt like a really easy use of one hit.
Mm-hmm.
However, I needed to raise some more money to get there.
Yeah.
So my second problem in the team, probably my first problem really, was Cancelo. He hasn't been playing great when he's been in the team, and everything seemed to be pointing toward him no longer being a first name on the team sheet. And for that much money, I don't want that ball.
No.
So,
I mean, Mark said the same last week, didn't he, Craig? If you listened into that, he was just like, for that amount of money, you need them to be assured of selection, which he didn't appear to be, and producing assured returns, which wasn't the case either, right?
And so with Cancelo, I needed to raise a bit of money for the keeper move. So this was the trickier one because, of course, City had the 2 double game weeks. United have most likely 2 double game weeks. This one this week and another one most likely in 22. So they were the obvious ones, but I didn't fall in love with any of the options. City because of rotation, United because of I would prefer Dalot, but he's injured. So I ended up saying, well,'a go for a second Newcastle defender, in this case Botman.
Okay. Yeah.
Knowing that he'll most likely blank in 25, but deciding that I'll just be happy to bank his clean sheets between now and then and deal with it in 25.
Makes sense.
That, thus far, has worked out because I actually haven't seen what on earth Mitrovic did to screw up his penalty.
I did.
Mitrovic penalty, and therefore I've lost out on his points from the goal not scored, but I gained on the clean sheet for Botman and for that case Trippier, which probably in an ownership context was a good thing.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. It was one of those weird ones, Craig, where he sort of kicked it against his own foot and it kind of changed the direction and went the opposing way that he was intending. So it was a double hit in effect. Okay. So
was it on purpose?
He ran off celebrating as if it was completely intentional, but the ref wasn't to be fooled. So yeah, it was one of those ones where he slipped and kicked it onto his standing foot.
Those were my method of transfers, if you like. And let's be honest, I'm not feeling great about them because keeper suddenly turned into save points all over the place and a 10-point haul for 1 game week. So, and 1 point thus far for Edison. So that stings a little bit, but it was meant to be paying off over a 5-week period, and I still feel comfortable that that's going to pay off. I just feel a bit stupid today.
Yeah, I understand that, mate. I understand that. And in terms of how that, so you're talking about minus 12 then pre-game week 20. How did that affect? So looking at your live rank right around 125k or around that ballpark, how did that impact things?
Quite a lot. I mean, the first thing I do most game weeks, at least if I've taken a hit, but I go on to the Fantasy Football Fix live game week section.
Yeah.
Log in and see what effect the hits have had on my rank. And my live rank at the beginning of the game week was, 71.5, 72. I should say at the end of last game.
I see, yeah.
And having taken the hits, I went to 125. 12 points hit took me, before a ball was kicked, from 72k to 125k. And I think that's really interesting because it just underlines just how ridiculously tight everything is right now.
Yeah.
And it's kind of similar in the other direction as well. Not quite as similar, but it's everything's really, really tight. So I think everything from now on is focused in the immediate fixtures with the who's going to double, who's going to blank, who's going to progress in the FA Cup, who's going to get to the final of the City Cup, whatever it's called. and which fixtures get cancelled and doubled because of that. And there traditionally is the chance to make up some rank and go for some differentials.
For sure.
Differentials, but at least shake the bag a little bit.
Yeah.
And
which I think is
definitely looking for those.
I mean, do you think it's going to alter your sort of approach to willingness to take hits, Craig, bearing in mind how tight it is? Do you think actually, now that we understand the value of 4 points this season affecting the rank that much, do you think you'd be less inclined to do that, or is that a really limited way of thinking about it?
It's particularly unhelpful for this chat, but I don't actually know. Traditionally, I've been always quite willing to take a hit. I mean, it's always based upon the same assessment. It's taking a slightly rose-tinted view of what do the numbers say, and then put together with my own feelings of, the eye test, as you call it these days, and saying, you know what, screw it, let's go for it. It's showtime.
Okay.
And take a few risks. But after last season, I got a little bit burnt, I think. Or I feel. So I've been a bit more conservative thus far this season. So I need to find the right balance, because that dropping from 72 to 125 without a ball being kicked from 3 hits.
Yeah. It's big, right? Yeah.
Was for thought.
Yeah, definitely. And it's really useful, those tools that you mentioned over on fantasyfootballfix.com as well, to understand and contextualize things. The points projections tools is awesome. And let's see, maybe when you and I talk in a few weeks' time, Craig, and see how Edison's points have played out against that projection, that could be quite interesting to check back and see how accurate that forecasting actually was. Look, I mean, looking at this slide, the chip that you've got in play on screen, we can see triple captain, obviously, on Erling Haaland for game week 20, along with a lot of other managers doing the same. We'll talk about him when we come on to talk about the team as well. But Man City as a collective, Craig, obviously they got beaten at Southampton without a shot on target in the Carabao Cup. They've now lost the derby. Obviously the goal with that Bruno Fernandes scores, you can refer to if you want. But how are you seeing them as an FPL asset ongoing?
Ever so slightly worrying compared to the fact I tripled up on them one day ago.
Yeah.
There is that feeling that in any game they could beat anybody 6-0.
Yeah.
That hasn't gone away, and the points projections show it, the bookies odds show it, and the feeling in my stomach confirms it, that I still think that on their day they are the most devastating team in the league. Quite clearly, Arsenal are the best team in the league right now, as today's game also underlined, really. But from a fantasy point of view, then quite clearly they're not ticking in the way they did at the start of the season with Haaland. I don't pretend to be some Michael Cox from the Athletic Tactics guru who could explain to you why that is, but it's just not quite. Well, even Gundogan himself said it last week, that something's just missing right now, and it is missing right now. But the moment it clicks, especially with some of the fixtures they have coming up, then it still, for me, is Haaland especially, is just by a country mile breaking the game with the potential for point scoring in a single or especially a double game week that he has in his locker. But quite clearly it's not working quite right.
No. So you think
but I think
some of the questions and the comments we get on these channels, Craig, is to ask you guys as elite managers strategically, so the broader questions. Do you think having 3 Man City players, forget the personnel right now, I think Hurling will take as read, but do you actually think trebling up on them remains the strategically the right play?
If we wind the clock back a bit more than 24 hours, they had 6 games in 4 weeks, and they are, give or take, the best team in the league with great fixtures. If you're not loading up on that, you're not playing the game right. It's as simple as that.
And I think for the viewers, really bear that in mind, folks. It may have been a disappointing derby return for people who didn't necessarily, maybe didn't have KDB, for example, and went heavier in the defence. But you're right, Craig, aren't you? You need to look a little bit of a longer lens and give them the chance to see those projections come through, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
For me, I'm frustrated, but I'm not worried about the fact that I have 3 City players going forwards. It will be different after 24.
Sure.
Once or 25, whenever the blanks come, because I think they have a few that they might. It was changed after the cup, the semi-final, hasn't it?
Yeah.
But there'll be a point in time where I start offloading them or dead ending into a wild card or something. But for now, especially now that I've gone for Edison in goal as my third City player, I just couldn't find any reliability.
No.
I mean, maybe there is, but I couldn't find any reliability in the defense right now. Partly because of their form, and it might be related, but partly also because of the fact that being Pep just seems to be changing the system a little bit on a almost weekly basis.
Yeah. Even more so than maybe historically.
Quite why, I don't know why, because I didn't notice it was broken, but there we go.
No.
He's obviously much better at this than I am.
So. Yeah, it might be marginally better. We'll see. All right, cool. Look, we've referred to the team a little bit already, Craig, but let's have a little look at how you're set up. And obviously, we've still got 2 games outstanding in Game Week 20, but let's have a look at the bus team and how you're set up for Game Week 21. So, guys, we can see the team now that Craig's got together for Game Week 21. Obviously, we've referred to Edison in goal there. That's a lovely looking back 3 there, Craig. I think we can probably start the conversation there. We talked about Edison at length there, didn't we, in the opening section? So, Newcastle flying high, right? They left it late today to get the 3 points in a tight game over Fulham. Obviously, got lucky with the penalty miss from Mitrovic that you referred to as well. But how are you sort of seeing them as a team? Is it actually now we think the likes of Almiron, who you have in the team, and Callum Wilson, we leave aside and say actually they're a really resolute defensive team and that's where we should focus the money?
Well, let's go one by one. Trippier is essential for reasons which surely don't need explaining by this stage of the season. Almiron has the form, and I think for the next 3 or 4 fixtures, they're just gold. Yeah. Absolute gold. They have Crystal Palace, they have Bournemouth. I forget who the next one is after that. Almiron he's not putting them away at the regularity he was before, but his numbers are still good for somebody who costs
great value, isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. I did have my plan going forward is that at some point Mitrovic becomes Nketiah.
Okay.
And I did have a look just tonight after the game when again Odegaard, or Odegaard, as you would say in English, is again just fantastic
Isn't
player to the eye, but also to FPL. So I did look at whether I could afford shifting Almiron or somebody on for him instead of doing the move. But I think I'm kind of boxed in. But anyway, you were asking about Newcastle.
Yeah, just as a collective,
Yeah. So Almiron's the only midfielder who really has the numbers to back it up. At least as far as I recall from last time I checked at Newcastle. Wilson is made of glass and is an injury waiting to happen. So I mean, I'm just not hugely interested in him because there are so many strikers, especially now that I've gone Kane and Haaland. There are so many excellent choices to fill that third striker spot. Mitrovic, Tony played, great game this weekend. He's probably about to get a double in one of the coming weeks.
If he can partake in it, right?
If he doesn't get a ban, and that's one of the reasons I didn't consider him in 19, because otherwise I would have done. And those who have gone for him are, laughing their asses off right now because 9 points is a nice return.
It is.
Marshall, when he's fit, and Nketiah with a double coming up, I just don't see the reason to take the risk with Harry Wilson, with Callum Wilson's.
No, I get it, man. And what attracted you about Botman? Was that just a price thing? Was there anything specifically in the underlying stats that fixes led you to, or what sort of drove that way? He's not a player I profess to know a lot about, Craig. So, is he a sort of player you'd recommend to FPL managers as a make weight?
At 4.5, I think that there's a trend in my mind there are so many cheap assets in defence moving forward in those anomaly teams, and by anomaly teams I mean it's hard to pick Arsenal, more than one Arsenal defender, because their attackers are just so
underpriced, right?
Fantastic. Yeah. Nonetheless, the price of Arsenal defenders compared to their form is ridiculous. The price of Newcastle defenders compared to their form is ridiculous. Wolves look like they're getting the game together. I've got Bueno somewhere on my bench. It's there's just so much value in the defense, and for me, Botman, it could have been Dan Burn as well, but it was just okay. I see at least 3 clean sheets in the next 4. I'll take the cheapest option who's nailed. If he gets a bonus, well, that's just fantastic. But it really was a little bit of eye test, but mainly looking at the points projections on Fix and saying, Botman looks good, or he looks good compared to the other Newcastle defenders at the price range. He's the one I'm going to go for.
Yeah, I like it. And those fixtures you mentioned, so Fix has them 4th defensive fixtures over the next 3. So that's 21, 22, 23, Craig. And the games are away at Palace, a home game against West Ham, and away at Bournemouth. And obviously they had the Fulham game today. So makes total sense that you got in on that. I think Trippier probably don't need to spend a lot of time thinking about, because he's been sort of an ever-present in most managers' teams for a long time now, with the value that he has and the points and the bonus sort of propensity he has to pick those up, right? Luke Shaw there, right? So he started centre-half in the Manchester derby. He's been in great form playing on the left side of the centre-half, and indeed at left full-back is more kind of favoured position there. What a player, right, in terms of FPL this season, and United have been much improved under Ten Hag, right? Do you think there's another team that we might think about doubling up on down the stretch and defensively? They've got a lot of value back there.
If Dalot had been named fit this weekend, I would have gone Dalot, no questions asked, even though they are probably going to blank in 25. Yeah. So are Newcastle, but Dalot has an extra game. So if there was a nailed on, I think I'm right in saying one of the other Fix Elite managers, it was maybe Matt Corbridge or maybe Cooper, ended up going for, and now I forgot his name, the Argentinian.
Oh, Martinez, yeah.
Yeah, who didn't show up.
Who was on the bench, wasn't he? It's been weird after the World Cup for him, actually. He seems to have lost his place, doesn't he?
But I think a fit Dalot is not as sure, but it's still a pretty good chance. But I think we have to wait and see what comes with the eventual double against Leeds, probably in maybe 2, and then see if they get into the final. Bruno is interesting because he has.
Well, I was about to say, Craig, just before we start on that. So you've got the 2 there. Don't think we need to talk about Marcus Rashford a lot. It's kind of in the Trippier vein, isn't he? It's just sort of a bit of a no-brainer there. Obviously, looking at your bench, you don't have a third United player. You mentioned Dalot there. Is that where you'd focus? You think Dalot over Bruno Fernandes, Tony Martial, another player made of glass? What are you sort of thinking, that third Man United player? Who would you be looking at and recommending?
Well, I was about to go for Martial this week. Then came the rumours that whatever the hell he'd done, slipped in the shower again or something. So he was out this weekend. So, but if I hadn't had that Twitter chit chat that he was out, then I wouldn't have gone for Kane. I was perfectly happy to wait until game week 24, 23 for Kane, when their fixtures become really ridiculously good, and go with Martial. And then actually the plan was, until the Martial injury, to keep Salah, and go for Martial and get KDB in. And that would leave me with some really useless cheap defender. I was probably going to end up going for Lewis just because he was cheap.
Yeah.
Locks a Man City spot. So after Martial was ruled out, then I just brought forward the inevitable Kane move. And took the plunge on getting Salah out, which I didn't feel great about, but I felt a whole lot better after watching them get their asses handed to them by Brighton. So,
isn't it interesting how the season...
in hindsight, like it was a good choice.
Yeah, and isn't it interesting how the season's kind of gone, Craig? I remember talking at the beginning of the season and the Liverpool contingent of players that we were talking about then, and Man United, off the back of 2 defeats to start the season. You fast forward a few months, and I'm not seeing a lot of Liverpool presence in this team or in any other elite team. And Man United are a team that we're talking about travelling up. Mad how it goes, right? Yeah.
I mean... it's changed fast, and I haven't looked at the detail since the games yesterday, but I think they can't be so far off Arsenal.
No, they were 25 to 1 to win the league before the Manchester derby, and they've now gone out to, or come into 12 to 1 now. So it gives you an idea that the bookies are starting to think that they are more than a passing thought in this title race, you know?
Yeah, it's starting to feel like a proper team, which has been a long, long time since.
It has, man. It has. And you mentioned there, it's really interesting, actually. You mentioned Spurs' fixtures from game week 23, which isn't so far away, right? Onwards. Obviously, they were well beaten today, I think. I think they were improved in the second half in the North London derby, but well beaten. But those fixtures are Leicester in an away match, home West Ham, home Chelsea, away at Wolves, and then Nottingham Forest for those 5 games. So if for people who've gone on Kane early, like yourself, Craig, is it just a case now of you've made your bed, you got to lie in it now and actually wait that out and see him come, give him those fixtures?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. If you've made that, I mean, if like me, you've made that move, then you may have been blinded, as I think many of us have been a little bit this week, but you may have been blinded a little bit by the doubles.
Yeah.
But just look, I mean, it's a long time in calendar days terms, but just look a little bit over the edge, and from 24 until the end of the season, that guy is going nowhere.
Yeah.
And he's, I forget how many points he is behind Haaland, but it's not very much.
It won't be many, will it? No.
He hasn't scored today, but he's just ticking over week after week after week. And yes, he's expensive, but that's what you're paying for. Somebody who just ticks over week after week. And there are so many others who are not delivering that. Yeah, I shouldn't sound too smug because I was quite happy to wait until 23 or 24. But
the Martial news kind of forced your hand a little bit there, I guess. Yeah.
But I feel intensely relaxed about him being in my team, and unless he gets injured, he's going nowhere.
Yeah, it makes sense to me, mate. Makes sense to me. Quick question on Martinelli. Looking in the midfield then, obviously a player that people got on early. A lot of the elite managers like yourself were on early. I guess you've got a lot of value tied up in him as well. Any temptation to look elsewhere, or is he another sort of mainstay and going to stay with you based on that value alone?
The last time we spoke, and the time before, I was quite adamant that there wasn't a better player who offered better value in the game than Martinelli. But since that time, then Ødegaard has demonstrated that to be false. If I had a free transfer, or if I could look at the numbers and say, okay, is this hit going to pay out? So a hit for Ødegaard compared to for taking out Martinelli, it's a bit on edge, but I would give my arm to have Ødegaard in there instead of Martinelli. I mean, it's not that I don't like Martinelli. I think he's fantastic. But Ødegaard right now for me is the best player. Well, of course, Haaland's a bit of a freak, but the best normal football player in the league right now. My problem is what to do with the third striker slot.
Yeah.
That it seems such an obvious move to go for Nketiah in that slot, especially when their doubles come and their fixtures turn, that I haven't yet found a way to deal with how to get Ødegaard into the team and maintain an interesting player in that third striker spot. I have no idea whenever we find out about Tony's possible ban for the betting issues. If there was word that Tony was fixed, then that could interest me. But at the same time, Mitrovic is not a bad option.
He's not, is he? I mean, he literally took a penalty today. It was a freak occurrence how he missed it. So
it doesn't seem to matter who they play. They seem to always pass at least one XG in the game, and he's always going to be the focal point of the attack or taking pens.
And he notches that goal, Craig. You would probably associate some bonus points with that as well, with how he plays and how the system awards it. Yep. And to that, the Nketiah one you mentioned, that would be your full Arsenal contingent there with Ben White already on your bench there. You got any reservations about the Nketiah moves based on Gabriel Jesus and the injury? We don't know yet, but it wasn't thought to be season limiting, was it? So any kind of reservations there, or you still think he's still, strike while the iron's hot with him?
Yeah, I'll take what's in front of me. They have a double in a short while. They are probably pound for pound by far the best team in the league right now.
Good today, weren't they? Yeah.
So it's not something I'm going to think too much about. As I say, I would prefer to have Ødegaard, but I don't know how to squeeze him in yet. So the easy move for me is hold fire this coming week and then go for Nketiah in 22 or 23.
Makes sense. Just a final question on that midfield. So if you were putting together a team from scratch, knowing what we do at this stage of the season, Greg, you were starting a game week 21 team. Would Almiron get the nod over Odegaard for you in that slot? Or would you shoehorn them both in?
Odegaard.
Yeah, Almiron or Odegaard. If it came down to your midfield had one slot remaining, you had budget for both. Would you still prefer Almiron with those fixtures that we referred to, or would you'd go Odegaard over him?
I'd go Odegaard.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, guys. For the viewers who've said if circumstance allowed, he'd be the one that you'd be recommending. Great goal today. He's been a great find, hasn't he, this season? And I do wonder what his price will be next season when the game rolls round again. It won't be what it is right now, will it?
This season, I'm sure.
No kidding, man. So you got one transfer, Greg. You got 2 million sat in your kitty there with a nice squad value as well. 2 games still to go. Let's say you come through unscathed, no injuries. What's the plan for game week 21 to do with that free transfer?
Open some more wine, sit tight, and do nothing. I have no plans unless there's a really, really bad injury, like a season-ending injury. I would really rather wait until we have some more knowledge about what's coming up with some more cup games are out of the way, and maybe we have some more fixture news about 22 and 23 and 24 and 25. There's so much coming up, which is going to define the medium term that I think you really, really, really have to sit. Since the guy who took a 12-point hit, but I think you really have to sit tight. And just wait and find out what happens. For me, there's nothing structurally about my team that I'm unhappy with. So
not at all.
I'll sit tight. No plans whatsoever.
Good man. And on that bombshell, then, guys, we will wrap it up there, Craig. So you're looking at a bus team there on screen that, all things being equal, that's where you'll be rolling into game week 21. And we'll talk again in a few weeks. I'm going to be fascinated to see how the Edison projection played out, whether or not Odegaard continues this form, Craig, and we can talk back and see whether or not it would have been sensible to make that sideways move from Martinelli in retrospect. So I look forward to catching up with you then. And thanks for coming on, man. It's been a pleasure as always.
You're so welcome.
All right, cool. All right, guys, that'll wrap it up for this week. So thanks very much for watching. Thanks to Craig. Do please smash a like on the video on your way out. Do please subscribe to fantasyfootballfix.com and do subscribe to this channel as well. We've got lots more content to come as the game weeks come thick and fast, and the double game weeks will follow in due course. Without further ado, guys, I will see you next week, and thanks for watching. Bye-bye.